Greetings, everybody. It looks like we're slowly rolling in participants. We have a really robust agenda ahead of us today. Again, this is Sarah DeSilvi, the Clinical Informatics Director of the Gravity Project. Welcome to our April 15th call. It's going to be quite the day. There's a lot to do, so we'll get started. Next slide, please. We want to thank you all for joining the Gravity Project. We always mute folks upon entry because there are so many of us. We remain muted to avoid background noise. We do record the call, and the call is available for review on the Gravity Confluence after the call. As you all are aware, I do try to include any comments in the chat into our conversation. So if you send a comment to everyone, I will do my best to integrate it into the work. I do want to advise it's very difficult for me to read personal messages sent just to me, so I will likely just read them out loud like I do everything. So it's hard for me to follow along to personal messages. So if it's sent to everybody, that would be great, and you can write me afterwards with any thoughts that you want me to specifically to reflect on. Next slide, please. This is our Gravity Project Antitrust Practices slide. Next slide, please. As you all are aware, we do invite everyone to officially join the project here. You all committed members got an email recently asking to recommit to the Gravity Project, just so we can really work on developing an understanding of committed members for things as critical as the consensus voting that we're about to do today. If you've not already joined the Gravity Project, you're welcome to join the project in the link on the sidebar there. If you want to check whether or not you've already signed up, or if members of your organization have signed up, you can do that at the second link. And then for all other Gravity Project information, please visit the Confluence, which is an ever-improving set of vast amounts of information regarding the Gravity Project and what we do. Next slide, please. A shout out, as always, project founders for support. This is a many hands make labor light collective, and we're very grateful. Next slide, please. This is our agenda. You can see there is a lot to cover. So brief announcements, brief update regarding the project schedule and overview. Really honored to welcome Lisa James from Futures Without Violence to kick us off for intimate partner violence. Mark is going to give a policy update, a very exciting one. We'll enter into the vote for material hardship. We'll cover some concepts regarding end-to-end review regarding stress after our subject matter experts adjudication, and then go into our technology update. There's not much to say regarding social isolation and loneliness, so we'll go straight into Bob's report after the stress review. Next slide, please. Yeah, announcements, and the next slide. The Gravity Project is seeking additional sponsors for our 2021 operations. It's an opportunity to be recognized as a contributor to our critical national work. As mentioned, we do have monetary supporters, in-kind supporters, and grantors. If you're interested in learning more about the sponsoring opportunities, you can send an email to gravityproject@emiadvisors.net or visit the spot on the Confluence that discusses Gravity sponsorship. Next slide, please. This is an invitation, as always, to our sister meeting. So this is the everybody all hands on deck meeting, the Gravity Public Calls that happens on Thursdays every other week. We specifically focus on the HL7 implementation guide on on Wednesdays from 3 to 4 Eastern Standard Time. Again, that's when Bob Dieterle, the technical director, dives deep into the work of the IG. You can see the HL7, you can see the meeting on the HL7 meeting calendar at the link. Next slide, please. We do want to let everybody know that we've been talking about this. We're very excited for our Gravity Project website. You can view the landing pages with some basic information, and all the cascading pages are getting built as we go forward. Great thank yous to everybody who helped us make sure that it was true to form. So thank you so much, and explore and then give us feedback. Next slide, please. This is a shout out to the Connectathon. I don't know if Bob or Evelyn wants to lead this, or I can just start talking and one of them can pipe in if needed. There's been lots of information and questions regarding the upcoming Connectathon. It's from May 17th to May 19th. The Gravity team is leading the Gravity Project SDOH Exchange Connectathon track. The focus of the Connectathon track is to test fire artifacts and exchange workflows in the IG, exchange workflows between multiple stakeholders, and survey automation process and reference implementation to support the various exchanges. So you can view the Gravity Project Connectathon track page at the first link. You can sign up to be a participant in Gravity's track at the second link, and you can always learn more about the process of HL7 Connectathons at the last link. Any other things that I've missed from the technical team? Seems like that's sufficient. Bob will be giving his technical update at the end of this call, so he can obviously answer more questions regarding the Connectathon. Oh, hi, Bob.
Hey, Sarah, this is Bob.
Hi, Bob.
Yeah, we'll be going over it again at the end of the call.
Great. And then Joni, we'll save that question. Can we participate if we don't have anything specific to test for that time, hopefully? I know, Joni, you're a big HL7 fan, so well, hopefully we can fire that to Bob at the end. Next slide, please. And then Evelyn, do you want to speak to this, or who wants to?
Sure. And I know Linnell is on. He could also pipe in. So just want to announce we are, as an HL7 Fire Accelerator, we support our other Fire Accelerator projects and the work that they do to advance the fire standards. So we just want to announce that there is an education and fire implementation event hosted by the Da Vinci Project that will be happening on April 26th to 30th. There is a registration cost, but there are optional ones you can pay by for the 5 days or 1 day. More information is on the link. We do want to recognize that this is an opportunity for organizations that want to participate in upcoming testing events, want to learn more about the fire standard, and also learn, I think we do encourage your involvement in the Da Vinci Project, because a lot of what they're working on within that Fire Accelerator is very applicable to the work we do within Gravity. So the Da Vinci Project is developing and testing and publishing the standards to support provider-to-provider data exchange, provider-to-payer data exchange. Their standards are called out in CMS and ONC rules. So we encourage you, if you can and you're interested, to participate. And Linnell, I see you. Do you want to add anything? Or Bob?
Yeah, the only thing I would add is Da Vinci is also working on exchanges from payers to members. So that's part of what's also named in the rule.
Thanks, Bob. Thanks, Sarah. Back to you.
All right. Next slide, please. And then this is, Evelyn, do you want to take this one also? You always do this slide.
We're just, the LEAP grant, ONC has published a grant opportunity to support standardized social referral data exchange. So we just want to announce it to those that aren't aware of it. Applications are upcoming May 10th. So we know many are starting to put together their proposals. We just want to acknowledge this work, since the grant does integrate the Gravity standard. So we're excited about that. Thank you.
Evelyn, could you clarify, this is Lucy, could you clarify, is the Gravity Project applying for one of these grants? Is it available to cooperate with any and all possibilities? What is the Gravity position with respect to these LEAP grants?
Thank you, Lucy. That's a very important question. The Gravity Project is a project, so we are not an entity. We cannot apply for this grant. We can partner with entities, other entities. So we are been asked to partner with entities across the country. So I think right now, actually, I'm just getting ONC. I requested, it'll be up on the federal, they said that they'll publish it on Monday. For us, we're supporting. We know that there's multiple projects being proposed, and we're happy to support the testing of the gravity identified standards. You can reach out if you have any questions. Please reach out to me directly, and I can answer.
All right. Next slide, please, is on to the project schedule and overview. So you can see we've done our best to integrate in a lot of the thoughts we've had in the meetings regarding upcoming domains and requirements and the timeline. So there's been a lot of work done on the terminology roadmap. You can see here we are in the middle of April. We are working through stress and social isolation, about to kick off with our amazing subject matter experts, intimate partner violence. And then in a little bit, we'll start to cover elder abuse. And then we'll see that break in July that we've talked about. And you can see in the fall or late summer, we'll be picking up the goals and interventions work as represented by the dotted line for the domains we're covering right now. So right now we're just doing screening, questions and answers, and diagnoses. We'll pick up the goals and interventions work in the fall for elder abuse, intimate partner violence, social isolation and loneliness, and stress. We'll also begin the work we've been talking about for some time, some of the community level work. So working, as we started with food insecurity on the individual level, working to food deserts on the community level, and then focusing on that for the first section of the fall, and then kicking off neighborhood safety in the later fall, and then working through the massive topic of racism, bias, and discrimination, covering many of the concepts regarding gender identity and discrimination and minority stress that we've been talking about over the course of our time at the end of 2021 and carrying into 2022. So we're hoping that this expanded roadmap puts some real estate onto things that we've been talking about for some time. And we look forward to having this help us guide our work. Matt Bishop's making a funny joke. Yes, so with COVID, well, the truth is we've been working through all of these things. We know how COVID affected food insecurity and housing instability. So it's been a very sadly and significantly apropos for our work over us. And then there's not any changes per se to the tech roadmap. You can see we are working with Gravity Pilots recruitment down the pilot work stream. So we're grateful again for the collective and helping us put this, identify our priorities. And again, we always are working off the Academy's paper, capturing social and psychological domains and electronic health records. We've talked about that a couple meetings ago. Any questions on the roadmap? All right, looking forward in future meetings, just one more comment. You'll see us start to try to better represent the labor of build. One of the things that we've heard from our colleagues in the terminology work is where we very clearly demonstrate the public facing part of our work. But at the close of every vote begins a fairly extensive process of build and taxonomy reconciliation with our terminology standard organizations, Registry, NCHS, and the World Health Organization, and SNOMED CT. So pretty soon you'll see a Gravity roadmap for terminology that represents this labor, so everyone can have an estimation of when code might be released for use. And so that's work to be coming over the next few weeks. Next slide, please.
Sarah, did you say LOINC and I didn't recognize it?
Yep, I did. I called it Registry.
Thank you.
Yeah, so
all right.
Yeah, so I just used the org name there. But yes, so what we're hoping to show is the status of build within the different domains. This is a slide we presented a couple weeks ago, maybe about a month ago, regarding engagement guide. We're going to move through this to the next slide. And then again, the next slide, this is just commenting on if you have information covered in past domains, please send us an email and we'll do our best to catch you up. Again, you all are aware that we had a recommitment process for committed members. We really are trying to make sure that our committed members represent the folks who are actually attending and committed to this work and committing to us helping us get this right and voting on our deliverables. So we asked everyone to commit a doodle poll about recommitment. That poll did contain an option for absentee voting. So if you're not able to attend today, there's an option to get an absentee vote, and you'll see when we get into the vote, we've extended our voting time. Going forward, we are going to ask committed members basically to recommit twice yearly, just to make sure we're keeping our membership up to date. Any questions regarding membership? We hadn't done this since our inception, so this was kind of an important step to make sure that we were querying the right people for voting and information. All right, next slide, please. And next slide. And next slide. This is the terminology roadmap we talked. Yes, so, oh no, so you should be able to get the link. So Michelle, if you do not get the link from in time, if we don't get to the material hardship vote in time, Sarah Bahal and the team can send one to you. We'll just make sure that we keep note of that. Next slide, please. This is our project schedule. You can see we have a robust schedule carrying us through the end of May. We're voting on material hardship and kicking off intimate partner violence today, again with our subject matter expert, Lisa James, reviewing some stress and social isolation concepts. We head into kind of a review meeting at the next meeting, and then kicking off elder abuse with our colleagues at ACL on May 13th. This is bumped by a couple meetings because we basically entered this treasure trove of wisdom that we needed to make sure we queried effectively. So we're working with ACL to get all of that work from ACL into our adjudication process. We'll be voting on stress on May 13th, and then voting on social isolation on May 27th, and then carrying intimate partner violence and elder abuse through the end of June. You can see these little suggestions for when to submit concepts, but really you can submit concepts until we enter into end-to-end review. And employment we already finished. So we did education and employment were part of the demographic domains that we finished earlier. If you mean whether we're going to be doing them for goals and interventions, yes, in time. Next slide, please. All right. Here we go, next slide. It is my honor to pass the mic to our colleague Lisa James, who will be presenting as a subject matter expert and helping us with this work. Next slide. We have two really amazing subject matter experts assisting us. Again, Lisa will be presenting today, unable to be here today, but critical for this work is Chris Grosso. So Lisa is the Director of Health at Futures Without Violence. I'll let her carry away in just a few minutes. And then Chris is the Associate Vice President for Health Informatics and Data Services at Fenway Health. And Lisa, are you ready to take us forward?
I am. Thank you so much. Can you hear me okay?
Yes, we can. And I believe we have your slides integrated. So I'll let you keep on going.
Okay, thank you. Thanks so much for inviting me. It's a pleasure to join you. I've been monitoring the work of your initiatives for some time now, so I'm just so pleased to have an opportunity to partner with you. I'm with Futures Without Violence, and just a little bit of background. We're a national nonprofit that is working to promote improved health education, safety, justice, and hope and healing in the United States and around the world. And we do a number of different initiatives and work in multiple sectors, including education and with judges and in the child welfare system. But the work that I do is on our national health initiative on violence. And so as part of that work, we've been running a National Health Resource Center on domestic violence that's supported by the Department of Health and Human Services out of the Family Violence Prevention and Services Program for nearly 30 years now. And that's really a place where there's a clearinghouse of tools and training resources, policy recommendations, and technical assistance for anyone who's wanting to build those partnerships between advocates and healthcare programs, and improve the health and wellness of survivors to promote prevention. Recently, we've also become a new National Technical Assistance Center for the community health centers, and NTAP. HRSA supported and created a new technical assistance center around intimate partner violence and human trafficking. So Any of you who are representing or in community health centers, please do reach out. You see my email there. We have a number of different learning collaboratives that we're working on as part of our national health network. Next slide, please. So all that to say is just we've been doing a lot of thinking for many, many years. I've been at Futures for over 25 years, thinking about these intersections between health and violence. And so we'll do just a little bit of level setting in terms of terminology. And when I'm talking about intimate partner violence, I'm really lifting up the pattern of behavior where one person in relationship is using a pattern of methods and tactics to maintain power and control over another. It is often a cycle that gets worse, not always, but it's the key here is pattern. It's not a one-time incident where somebody loses their temper, but rather one that uses where people who use violence are quite coercive and controlling. And they use not only physical violence, but also emotional abuse and a number of other strategies that are coercive. I think it's important to lift up that leaving an abusive relationship isn't always the safest or best option or most realistic option for survivors, and that survivors know themselves when it's best to make that shift. So when we're thinking about healthcare responses, sometimes people in an effort to try to be helpful want to rush towards encouraging people to leave an abusive relationship. And so it's important to recognize that sometimes that can be a very dangerous thing to do, and we have to trust the survivor to know what's right and safest for them. Next slide, please. I'll just lift up that legal definitions are much more focused on physical and sexual assault, but we really work within a public health definition that includes a much broader range of controlling behaviors, as I talked about. And that's what you're seeing in the healthcare setting in terms of impact. It's the impact of emotional abuse, social isolation, intimidation and threats and stalking, the whole gamut of an abusive relationship that has such significant wear and tear on the individual. Next slide, please. So unfortunately, this is a very, very common problem. About 1 in 4 women and 1 in 9 men at some point in their life will experience intimate partner violence. Similarly, 1 in 5 women and 1 in 14 men will experience rape or attempted rape. And it really runs the gamut in terms of who are both perpetrators and victims. So we have some particularly high risk populations like young mothers. There's high risk in rural settings. And it just really runs the gamut, but it's highly, highly prevalent. So when you're thinking about your patient population, just keep these numbers in mind. Next slide, please. Because of this and because of the health consequences of violence, which I'm going to talk a little bit about, HRSA has recognized both through their development of a new technical assistance center, but also they've recognized intimate partner violence and human trafficking as complex public health issues. And now they have created new UDS measures on both human trafficking and intimate partner violence that just began this year in January. Next slide, please. So I think the timing of your work here is so critical because many, at least those working in community health centers, are looking to understand how can they collect data. And of course, we're looking to understand, collect data and improve care, coordination and care for survivors around intimate partner violence. So this will be a very timely and important initiative that you're embarking on. And UDS, thank you. Uniform definitions, what's the S? Somebody help me out here. Systems. Basically what you need to report to if you're a community health center, thank you, data. Thank you, Ned. On my feet. Community health centers need to report on a number of different measures, and it's very new now that they're going to be reporting on disclosures around intimate partner violence and human trafficking. Thanks. If I use any other acronyms, please, if I don't catch it in the chat, feel free to speak up. I think that the critical thing to take away here and why we see such policy shifts like what HRSA is doing and like the inclusion of intimate partner violence as a B recommendation in the U.S. Preventive Services Task Force is because of the health impact of intimate partner violence. And I think when I first started this work, so many of us were focused primarily on the black eyes and the broken bones, but we know that intimate partner violence has long-lasting chronic health and long-lasting health impact, including some here that you see on this list. Next slide, please. I want to lift up just a few impacts to consider, and one is traumatic brain injury and strangulation, just because we're seeing really high rates of women who are experiencing intimate partner violence who've also incurred a traumatic brain injury. And I'll lift up, even though I talked a little bit about gender with the prevalence data, a lot of the data around health consequences are looking at health consequences for women because of the higher rates for violence against women. So you'll see that reflected in some of these studies that they're largely looking at the impact on women. So with more than 2/3 of victims being strangled at least once, the idea and keeping traumatic brain injury in mind when you're thinking about survivors of domestic violence is really critical. Next slide, please. Similarly, oh, this is animated. If you could click twice, I think. Thank you. Similarly, we see a whole host of impacts on behavioral health, everything from anxiety and PTSD to suicidal ideation, and also on unhealthy coping mechanisms such as substance use. So that's something that all behavioral health programs should be incorporating, is an awareness of intimate partner violence and its impact on health. Next slide, please. Oh, yes, that's right. Research suggests that women may also be more likely than men to use opioids to self-medicate, including for other problems, including anxiety or stress. Next slide, please. I want to lift up this study, and you can click through. Sorry, I forgot about the animation. There you go. Thank you. It's not just coping mechanism, but also, again, when I talked about those coercive and controlling behaviors, we see that substance use is another way that abusive partners exert power over their partners. And this is from a survey that was done with the National Domestic Violence Hotline that directly asked about substance abuse coercion. And you see here on the slide that hotline callers were reporting that their partners were pressuring them or forcing them to use and they were afraid to call the police. They were discouraging them from getting help, directly putting either alcohol or drugs in sight when they were trying to get clean, or threatening to report that substance use in order to get their partner in trouble, or, for example, keep custody of their children. So just keep that in mind, that it's not just coping mechanism, but also direct interference by an abusive partner. Next slide, please. And again, we just see very high rates of opioid use among IPV victims. And when using, they're also more susceptible to violence. So it's a sort of a vicious cycle. Next slide, please. Unfortunately, this is a problem that does impact adolescents, and we're seeing high numbers, as I mentioned in the outset, of adolescent relationship abuse and some of those same behavioral health consequences young women are experiencing as well, both depression and anxiety, but a lot of disordered eating and substance use and suicide risk, and also initiating sex at an earlier age. We see both earlier exposure to intimate partner violence leads people to initiate sex earlier, and then increases the risk for dating violence. So again, that sort of way in which both of these issues play off one another, both putting at risk and then putting at further risk for violence. Next slide, please. As we're all very well aware, that teens are relying so much on technology, and we're seeing that as both an opportunity for support with their peers, but also an opportunity for exerting power and control. So 1 in 4 teens have reported being harassed by using their cell phone. Next slide, please. When we see that cyber harassment, it's a red flag for other kinds of abuse. So you'll see that those who've been experiencing technology-based harassment also experience other types of either psychological or physical or sexual abuse. Next slide, please. Similarly, for those of you who are thinking through strategies for perinatal, reproductive, or sexual health settings, we see a very high impact, very, very high impact of intimate partner violence in reproductive and sexual health. Really high rates of survivors reaching out in reproductive and sexual violence settings. And then, of course, the health consequences being increased likelihood for rapid repeat and unplanned pregnancy, sexually transmitted infections, including HIV, and trafficking survivors, as well as intimate partner violence, just being much more at high risk for sexual health complications as well. Next slide, please. Similar to substance use, I want to lift up the role that coercion plays here, because we've really tried to get under the hood there about what's happening in these relationships, and through a variety of different studies have recognized that this is partly due to the fact that reproductive and sexual coercion is very much a part of some abusive relationships. And so that partners might want to maintain power and control by controlling somebody's reproductive or sexual health choices, including attempts to impregnate a partner against their wishes, interfering with contraception, controlling the outcomes of a pregnancy, and of course, coercing a partner to have sex. Next slide, please. So that's a lot of intense information about the long-term health consequences of abuse. But I do want to say, and I know we'll get to this in some of our future meetings, that I have great hope for the role that healthcare providers can play. And we've got some great models out there that are showing that you can really make a difference in terms of improving health and safety through healthcare-based interventions. And it's important because so many of the patients that health providers are seeing, they might not be going to their local domestic violence programs. And these health providers must be, they might be the first responders for people who are experiencing intimate partner violence. They might be the first people, particularly in the time of COVID, where we're all facing such isolation, where you're the only person that this client or patient has been allowed to speak with. And an important access to information to help with safety. So we'll talk more later about what that might look like, but do consider healthcare providers as the lifelines that they truly are when it comes to promoting prevention and serving survivors. Next slide, please. And again, more to come, but just to lift up that it's also not only the responsibility of health providers to make a difference, and the model that we really promote, both through our technical assistance center with community health centers and also our other work across the country, is looking at building those partnerships between the domestic violence programs that are out there in the community, and where you don't have a local program, there is a national hotline. And making sure that we have a real meaningful partnership there. We understand the work that each other does. We make warm referrals. We know what will happen when that referral gets made. And we facilitate that referral in the clinical setting. So I have a lot to say about what a meaningful relationship a partnership can look like. And there's tools and resources on our website, which we can talk about later. Next slide, please. So I see I'm at time, so I'll just mention, though, that sometimes people think of domestic violence programs as primarily shelter, but do know that there are a lot of non-shelter services that domestic violence programs offer, like here, these that you see here, that can be a core part of care coordination, care management, and also all of the work that you're looking at in terms of social determinants of health. They're pretty critical service providers in your community if you haven't connected with them. Next slide, please. And this is just a list that I'll leave you with. You'll have a copy of these slides so that you can know about the hotlines that are funded by the Department of Health and Human Services. And again, if you don't know your local program, call that hotline. They have a list and they will be able to tell you who's the closest to serve you in your health center. Next slide, please. So next time we talk, I will talk through some of the more hopeful sides in terms of evidence-based interventions that work to improve health and safety. So next slide, please. I just want to leave you with there is more to come and more resources around. If you want to dive in before we meet next time, here is a toolkit, an online toolkit that we created for community health centers and for HRSA. So there's a whole host of resources here. Next slide, please. And I'll go through that that intervention and other models during future conversations that really look at ways to promote safety and confidentiality, improved health, and connections with the community. And I'll just leave you with really recognizing that I think when we started this work, we were so eager to identify and get people to safety who do disclose. But again, we've really reframed our idea of success, which is success is measured by our efforts to reduce isolation and improve options for safety for survivors, rather than to fix the problem, and particularly rather in this context of just collecting data about it. So I'm excited to collaborate with you on this initiative. Thank you. Oh, I think I might have one extra slide, sorry. Yes, just two things. If you are a health center and you'd like to join a learning collaborative that we're convening on health information technology and these new measures, please just contact my email directly. And in 2 weeks, we're having a national conference on health and domestic violence, and this link here, you can join us. There are over 200 presenters, really featuring some great best practices, research, and models for intervention. Thank you.
It's hard to know what to say. Lisa, that was so powerful. Thank you so very much. We are always incredibly indebted to our subject matter experts, but just really incredibly grateful for you coming here today and presenting this critical information, and just incredibly honored to have you with us on this journey. Do we have any other questions from the community? It's almost hard to say to segue into something else. It really was amazing content. Really super grateful for Lisa, and thank you all for participating in the Intimate Partner Violence Kickoff. I do want to state something that I didn't clarify in the beginning. Initially, you might have noticed that due to actually some of the screening methodology, elder abuse and intimate partner violence were joined. What I want to state is because of what we do at Gravity is we listen to the experts of the domains, right, and let them be our guide. And we've heard very clearly the need to consider these things as separate and independent. So we're going to be sitting with intimate partner violence at this time. And then, as I mentioned at the beginning, approaching and discussing concepts of elder abuse and neglect with ACL in the future, but really honoring the subject matter expertise in this particular area and honoring Lisa James, and looking forward to our future work together. Thank you, Lisa.
Thank you. Thank you. It's such a pleasure to work with you all. Like I said, I really have been, I told you this already, Sarah, but I've been trying to get into some of these Gravity projects, but I haven't quite had the time. So this is just a great opportunity. I know I have a lot to learn from you all. So I'm really looking forward to our collaboration.
And likewise. Just so honored. All right. So again, we're going to briefly pivot to have our colleague Mark Savage present some exciting updates with our policy work. Mark, are you with us?
I am. Thanks. Next slide. So I'm here to share some news that is hot off the presses from this morning. You'll recall that Gravity Project, with all the work that you have been doing over the past year and more, made a submission to the Office of the National Coordinator of a new social determinant of health data class to be added to the exchange, to the terminology and the exchange that can happen across the digital health ecosystem. And unfortunately, that did not make it into the draft that ONC released on January 12th. However, I sit on the US CDI, US Coordinator for Interoperability Task Force, and on April 6th, we made a recommendation to add the Gravity Project Social Determinant of Health data class into USCDI version 2, and we made that recommendation to the Health IT Advisory Committee, which is under ONC. Today, this morning, the Health IT Advisory Committee heard that recommendation. It was a long presentation, about an hour, and unanimously approved that recommendation and is forwarding it to the national coordinator. This is not the final step. The national coordinator has to make a determination and will to whether to add or not. But this national coordinator, Mickey Tripathi, has said that a priority for his ONC is health equity by design. And the Gravity Project letter, which we submitted yesterday, made very clear in the first few paragraphs that the social determinant of health data class was essential for health equity by design. So all to say, not taking anything for granted, but this was a great step this morning. Stakeholders across the country sit on this advisory committee, and they said yes unanimously. Next slide, please. And in the interest of time, let's go one more slide. So this is just a visual of sort of what that looks like. And I will say social determinants of health was not the only thing that we recommended and HITECH also approved. I put forward the gender identity and sexual orientation data elements. Those went in, those were unanimously approved. Care team members defined broadly, so not just provider members on the care team, but all care team members. So that would include the community-based organizations that are providing services as care team members. That would include people in the family that are providing care as care team members. Care team members defined broadly and their roles and relationships. So it's a long list, but this just sort of illustrates, we took a lot of data elements that ONC had not included and that were in the sort of the missing column and added them in so that they can become priorities for use now. Next slide, please. As always, this is a collaborative effort. So when we made the submission in October, people in the community wrote letters of formal support. And people have written letters now on draft version 2, also adding support. And in fact, some of the names that I've seen that filed letters today didn't make it up on this list yet because they've been submitting the letters after I prepared the slides today. So a huge thank you to the people on this list. Next slide. Likewise, when CMS asked for, put out a request for information on social risk, organizations also highlighted the Gravity Project's work explicitly. So another amazing list of people across the nation saying, yes, we need this now. I think that is my last slide. So let me just pause and say, this is a woohoo moment. And we, everybody who's listening now and the people who have been working on it, but didn't have to make the call today, you all had a role in this. This is a major moment in moving healthcare for the underserved forward, healthcare for the served forward, and we should all feel extremely happy about it. Thanks.
You're a hero, Mark. Thank you.
Gravity is a hero.
Well, you've been spearheading this at the forefront, understanding the federal process, helping all of us to understand how we could help you. So it was a team, but you've been at the head of it. So thank you. Well done.
You're welcome. Glad to help.
I'm just going to
Back to
echo
you,
what
Sarah.
Lucy said and just say thank you, Mark. You know how much I appreciate you, both as a friend and as a colleague, and incredibly grateful for representing and persisting and leading this part of our work forward. So thank you so much.
Persisting is the least I can do, right?
No, nevertheless, yes. All right, so everyone, thank you. Okay, so Jenny has a question. So what is the next opportunity? I actually don't know this question. the answer to this question? What is the next opportunity that ONC could adopt?
So if they, Jenny, if Mickey Tripathi, the national coordinator, for some reason decided not to include it in version 2 that comes out in July, then it could be included in version 3, where submissions are due in October. A draft version 3 would normally be released in January of 2022. There would be public comment on that, all for a process of formally releasing a version 3 in July of 2022. So it's an annual process for adding it to the US CDI. It's also possible for people, with all of the work that is happening on the terminology work streams and the technology work streams at Gravity, even if it didn't make it into US CDI version 2, people could go ahead and use it. So that's one of the amazing things about our work is the US CDI doesn't hold it up. It keeps going. It's available for use.
So Mark, let's assume the opposite, that Mickey Tripathi does accept this. What happens as a result of that?
It then becomes, what happened is the visibility as a national standard, as a national expectation. It is voluntary. It's not mandatory because this is what we call sub-regulatory. It's not been put in the regulations yet, but it's telegraphed to everybody that this is a part of the core data needed for exchange and use nationwide. And all of the people on this call, all of the people on Gravity's executive committee and the strategic advisory committee and the technical advisory committee all want to be using it now. You will see a huge swell in implementation. So this is really an important step in driving implementation and use, and thus the benefits from having this as a part of people's care.
I guess I'm wondering how this actually gets into the workflow. Does there have to be redesign, EHR redesign, or are there enough cells in the EHRs that everybody uses now so that people are just adding new numbers, or what?
There will be some, I think probably depends on the EHR, there will be some EHR redesign. 2015 edition of Certified EHR Technology does include an optional social determinant module. That doesn't mean that it's a standardized module across all EHRs. They can all do it. They can all do it. Differently.
Yeah.
So they're now all going to be gearing towards FHIR-based API exchange, which is good. They've been on notice that they're going to have to do that since May of 2020 when ONC and CMS published their rules. So that work of pivoting towards FHIR API exchange has been ongoing for a year. I think they're going to be able to pick it up pretty quickly.
All right. So Jenny has a question about any upcoming CMS regulatory or funding opportunities into which this data could be included. Well, this makes me think of the letter to state Medicaid agencies that came out a bit ago. I don't know, Jenny, if you'd seen. So we've linked that to some of our work on the Confluence, but in the CMS recommendations to states, Medicaid agencies, and addressing SDOH, the Gravity. Oh, great. Okay. Then that was my first thought. If anyone else has any other thoughts, that would be that can ping to answer Jenny's question. And Mike, as a clinician, I just want to honor, yes, the exchange standards will be big, but there's a lot of work to do to make the information useful in the daily workflow of practice. 100%. We are, one of the things I think Gravity is recognizing is that it really needs to start ensuring that we work with our colleagues to really consider implementation, not just in piloting the IG, but piloting process and code and terminology. So we look forward to doing that more intently over the course of the next months. And we have lots of ideas of partners to do that work with. Of course, Mike, you would be a crucial one.
Sarah,
yes,
and Evelyn, for example, there's a HIMSS meeting coming up. I think it's in June. is there going to be a gravity presentation
Yes.
there? Because that's where all the people who fill out medical records congregate.
Yes, I'm excited. We don't have the official dates, but both Sarah and Bob have 2 sessions, education sessions at HIMSS. So we will announce that when we have, it's in August in Las Vegas. Right now, it's still planned to be in person, but our education proposals were accepted. So please stay tuned for that. But yes, Lucy, thank you for acknowledging the work through HIMSS.
That's great. Thanks.
Yeah, and you just heard my little public health cry. Sorry. In person, in August, in Vegas. So we'll see how that goes. But yeah, very honored to be presenting at HIMSS. Looking forward to that work. And I do want to say there's a lot of investment, ever-growing investment from our vendor partners in this work, and we're very grateful for that. All right. Thank you, Mark. He had to leave, I'm sure. So we have a quick pivot to do the material hardship vote. And then, oh my gosh, this meeting is a little bit longer than we intended, but we'll do our best. Next slide, please.
I hope that you're doing the best you can, because
because why? Yeah, I hope I am too. Next slide, please. All right, so we're going to quickly review just some items of material hardship and then go to the vote. I want to let everybody have in front of their faces some of the changes that were made to the master. The masters have been uploaded and updated twice since we last saw you, and emails went out to the collective every single time. Next slide, please. Material hardship screening tools and subdomains haven't changed very much. Next slide. And next slide. Again, you'll see we've noticed this. Oh, sorry, go back one. I messed this up. You'll see we were very, very clear to communicate to you all. So we had a quick reflection after our last meeting regarding the concept of unable to obtain medicine and other items and medical care, and we realized it was actually a logical extension to include that in our work. So you'll see on the master updated concepts that align with some of the inclusion terms we had in our ICD-10 submission. So just note we did a quick pivot after our last phone call, and you'll see expanded concepts that have been communicated in emails to you all regarding medicine and access to medical care. Next slide, please. And then these are the goals. These are unchanged. If you want in your comments, we've heard nothing really regarding these 2 different approaches. So if you're going to say yes with comment in your vote, and feel like one of the goals than the other, we can reconcile those comments in our comment reconciliation process. But if you feel like both of these need to go forward as they stand, we can just carry right along. Next slide, please. We did want to make a specific focus on interventions. There are some updates. Again, some of these things happen quite quickly as we work and show things in front of our subject matter experts from different domains, such as our colleagues in the 211 space. You can see everything's in red here that's new. Again, this has been on the master, that's been on the Confluence, so it's what you would have seen if you went there this week. We've added Lifeline Wireless, which is the federally, some folks call it the Obama phone, right? So this is the Medicaid-associated cell phone, which also offers internet assistance, but we're specifically highlighting the phone because it's the most universal program. There's also a broader telephone assistance program. If you remember at our last presentation, we were focusing just on utility assistance as a broad concept. When we talked to our community-based organization colleagues, they really wanted to specify the different types of assistance for their own tracking and their own work, and so it seemed appropriate and logical to include this code at a more specified level. We didn't include the Lifeline Wireless program at the internet assistance level because we didn't have enough assessment of need to kind of elevate that there. So these are the critical updates. You'll see the low income home energy assistance program is there, and you'll see also an includes but not limited to home energy assistance program, because in some states that's what it's called. And then always when you look at one of the programs, you'll see that there is the capacity for a broad assistance program that can be utilized, whether it's private organizations, the utilities themselves, or other community entities. Any questions here? Oh, lovely. Thanks, Jenny. Next slide, please. All right. So, Sarah, is Sarah B on the call? No, is she in her class? Because I can lead this. All right, I'm going to go forward. If I hear them, amazing. I always try to give Sarah Bahal, our amazing analyst, as much credit as possible because she holds us all together. So this is the
Sarah,
consensus.
is this an email to all of us with a link to be sure that we vote? Or are we supposed to remember all of this?
You'll see on the next slide.
Thank you.
Right. Yes, absolutely. This is just reminding folks of the voting process. So yes, does not necessarily mean that the deliverable is the ideal, but it's better to move forward than block the deliverable. Yes, with comment is, as I mentioned, with the goals, if you feel like yes, but you there's something you might want to have be different, you can put it in a comment. All comments have to be submitted via email. So you have to write to Gravity Project emiadvisors.net by 4/22/21. And as I mentioned, all comments are reconciled. So enough comments, we reconcile them post fact. So a formal objection is when you do not feel like the set can go forward. This vote, every formal objection has to be accompanied by a comment. A formal objection without a comment is considered an abstention only, and an abstention is a member declines to vote. I want to just elevate the abstain element so you can be a committed member and just be present and abstain, and that is allows us to achieve consensus. So for those of you who are wondering whether you had the bandwidth to be involved all the time, abstention is a great way to go. Next slide, please.
So Sarah?
Yes?
And Evelyn, this is a little bit technical, but is a majority of people voting or a majority of the members?
So we really, part of the reason why we went with the recommitment process is it's the committed membership is the membership that we achieve consensus within. So it's the committed members who are, the expectation is to vote, and we assess whether we've reached consensus by querying the N of committed members.
Thank you.
You can see the link now in the, and Lucy, if you want us to directly email you the link, I can do that, actually, if that's easier for you.
That would be cool. That's how I act. When it comes in an email, do it. Okay.
And then,
thank you.
Evelyn, what are your thoughts there?
Oh, yeah, the link is
Julia trying to talk.
Oh, sorry. I can't understand. So what did someone say?
It's Julia. I was trying to ask a question.
Okay, yes.
So I think at our organization, we talk about how we vote as an organization. Only one person submits the vote. Are you saying that what we should be doing is have everyone submitting the vote, each person submitting a vote?
So what we're talking about with Michelle is we really consider members as individual folks, right? So, and that's the way we've considered all of our representation, except in our committees, which have intentional design. So we talked about you and Pedro and Michelle being reps from NAC. So all three of you can vote independently, or you can decide to just have one of you vote, whatever works regarding your membership. But you all are so invested in the project, you're kind of a special, a special case.
Okay, thanks.
Yeah. NAC is definitely a special case when it comes to the Gravity. They're so amazingly invested and we care about all of you all very much, but we are grateful to them being on our EC and our SAC and our TAC and everything. All right, so we have gotten some requests for sending the link to vote, and so we'll do that. You can note, I just want to note to everybody before you drop off that we have extended the amount of time to vote based on feedback from last time. So you have until 5 p.m. tomorrow. Right, this allows you to download the spreadsheets, review them, and take time. And we look forward to getting your votes over the course of the next 24 hours. All right, I'm going to move forward just because I want to get to Bob before the end of our time. So next slides. Next slide, stress. I'm going to quickly go through stress. Nothing changed here. Next slide. And again, thanks everybody for going on this journey with us. There's a lot to cover in our time, and we do our best. Next slide. I'm going to go to where there's changes. Next slide. I wanted to update everyone on the goal standards. That's 5 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. Yes, Jenny, thank you. Sorry. We're largely in Eastern Standard Time, org, and we want to let people clock out for the weekend. The perceived stress scale is the gold standard scale when it comes to the stress measurement. So you'll see we have both a 14, a 10, and a 4-item screener as part of our master set. This is equivalent to the approach of the USDA food security module and the incoming housing security module. This is the measure at which all other measures are measured against. We are not covering minority stress at this time. We're covering minority stress in the winter and late fall when we cover issues of racism, discrimination, and bias. We're only covering elements of general stress at this time, according to the work we're doing right now. We do need other folks on board in order to do that part well. So this is an update. Next slide, please. We have some updates and tools that you'll find on the master over the next few days. Again, we've been very busy getting ready for material hardship, but over the course, like by Monday or Tuesday, by the Tuesday email, you should definitely see the new master list. And I hope that's not too much pressure on our amazing team to say that out loud. You can see we are trying, as always, to include all broad population health measures such as names. Next slide, please. You can see that the massive spreadsheet from the compendium has been winnowed according to the literature of what defines stress. So from that huge table that we had the other day, this is where we've landed. So not including things like adjustment disorder, because that does not apply. Understanding that stress is a broad parent under which many other concepts can live. But when it comes to best case, this is where we are at this time. And we meet every other week with the subject matter experts, Dr. Eric Prather, who's a representative of the Stress Measurement Network, and we'll review this again with him when we see him on Tuesday. And I think that's it for stress updates. And then I'm going to pass the mic to Bob belatedly, and I'm so sorry it took so long. I want to thank, we don't have any updates on social isolation because our SMEs are meeting very shortly. Thank you, everybody. What a meeting so far. Bob, are you ready?
Yes, I am. If you could hand me control. Okay. Can you see my monitor?
It's slowly coming. It's a black box for me.
Is it not sharing?
I don't see anything yet. I don't know if anybody else.
Okay, hang on. Let me try it again. Well,
oh, there we go.
There we go. Is that working now?
Yeah, got it.
Okay, sorry. I'm not sure. I seem to be having a bit of a network problem, so we'll, worst case, we'll walk through it verbally. But most of this you have seen. As you know, we have submitted a fire implementation guide for ballot in the January cycle, covering a number of activities, assessments, establishing health concerns and problems, establishing goals, managing interventions or referrals, dealing with consent, and aggregating for reporting. It was submitted as a standard for trial use level 1. It does support the areas I just mentioned, along with specific code systems to describe them, assessment surveys, light-coded, and much of this Sarah has gone over multiple times on these calls. Health concerns and problems, ICD-10, CM, and SNOMED-CT. Goals, LOINC and SNOMED-CT. Interventions, SNOMED-CT, CPT, and HCPCS. And then we're recording the results of interventions as procedures, again, using the same set of terminology. We're working with NCQA and NQF on quality measures. We'll probably be working with the effort that DaVinci has on data exchange for quality measures, because it's broad and covers virtually all quality efforts, and NCQA has been a major You've seen this process of automating surveys once they're like coded, being able to produce ultimately questionnaires, responses, observations, which record the question and the answer, and pre-coded condition, resources, or health concerns that can be promoted to problems on the problem list or diagnoses. You've seen this before. This was our initial focus on exchanges. The blue arrows are the things we focused on: the ability to do a survey, the ability to go and record the results of it, the ability to exchange interventions, in particular between providers at community-based referral organizations or community-based organizations, or provide a set of information related to specific organizations, such as a payer who has the coverage for a certain cohort of individuals. We have worked on the consent effort. We're establishing a process for consent between the patient and the provider. That's the basis on which information is released to community-based organizations. If those community-based organizations are business associates of a covered entity, then the consent resource itself will be exchanged along with the other information to give the referral organization a record of the patient's consent to have that information released specifically to community-based organizations that will actually deliver the service. We reached a point where we had an implementation guide that provided all of the resources that we've talked about and their profiles for them. And what we did next was to take a look at how we could support all of the other exchanges that we are focused on in the SDOH community. So we've expanded the scope of what we're doing to include workflow to support all of the exchanges here in blue. So that's from providers, from payers, between community-based referral organizations, from community-based referral organizations to community-based organizations that will actually go and deliver the services. And we are looking at how we can do things that communicate with individuals and organizations that don't necessarily have the technology capability to do direct FHIR API interactions. Those are indicated by the orange arrows. So we'll also be supporting those exchanges to the extent that there are applications that have been developed or are being developed, in particular for patients or their legal representatives and caregivers, and for community-based organizations that don't have specific technologies that will allow them to participate in a peer-to-peer FHIR exchange or RESTful exchange. But we are supporting all of these, and we're defining them as part of the implementation guide that will be both tested at the Connectathon next month and published, or at least submitted for publication in June. To simplify the picture a little bit, we're looking at having all of the organizations basically act as peers to each other for these exchanges. We do recognize that a patient or caregiver may require alternate methods of communication if they do not have internet access either directly or through their smartphone. And so we do recognize that there will be individuals and potentially organizations that will be serviced out of band from the electronic exchanges that we're defining. This is a summary of where we are. Sarah showed the timeline at the beginning. We're in April. We have completed the reconciliation of 173 of the 227 ballot comments. We have dispositions for those. We have roughly 54 to go. Our expectation is we'll complete them by the end of April and have them incorporated, at least the ones that are important for the Connectathon, in the implementation guide prior to the Connectathon that Sarah mentioned at the beginning. Since we are looking at additional exchanges between other organizations, payers and referral platforms, et cetera, they're listed here, we're also soliciting from the Technical Advisor Committee those particular resources that they believe should be exchanged as a default between these organizations. So we've solicited some feedback from them to go and make sure that we are in the workflow indicating what should be required and what should be optional. We will support exchanges of all the things that we have defined to set here. So what's next? We continue to work on developing the NLM tooling to support the assessments and surveys and automating the process. As Sarah's continue to work with the community to establish the clinical content or the semantics of what we're doing. We are advancing the development of the reference implementation. It will support almost all of the exchanges that we showed in that diagram by the time we get to the Connectathon in May. And then we are incorporating the dispositions, as we said, into the fire implementation guide. We do have a call every Wednesday, which was announced earlier. Come join us if you're interested in working through the ballot reconciliation for the next 3 or 4 weeks. And then we will turn around and go back and focus on specific issues related to workflow. And finally, at Connectathon 27, we do have a track, Gravity SCRH Exchange track. Here's a link to it. I believe that was provided earlier. But if you look at it, here's how you go and register for the Connectathon. This is what the page looks like on the HL7 site. You do need to register to participate, and you need to register by the end of the month. If you want, I believe you have to register by the 23rd if you want the discounted price. The other thing is, please, if you're going to participate and you're going to register with HL7, come and sign up on our Confluence site to indicate the roles that you are going to play or planning on playing at the Connectathon. And that looks like the following. So you'll identify yourself, your organization, how we can contact you, and which of the actor roles you intend to play. And I'll go back to the slide because they're a little more visible there. So you can play the role of a provider or an EHR of a community-based referral organization or its platform, community-based organizations or applications supporting them, survey application or platform to deliver them, the health information exchange, a patient or caregiver through an application, or a payer or payer's HIT. So these are the roles that we'll have an opportunity to test at the Connectathon in May. And I believe that's the end of it. Do we have questions? Because I have not been looking as I've been going through this.
I know, I decided to interrupt you, friend. We don't have a ton. We have a question regarding whether or not HIEs are actors in the data sharing model and in the methodology and perspective of the IG.
Say that one more time, because I'm not for some reason I can't see the questions again.
Are HIEs included as actors? So on the wireframe, yeah.
They were updating the individual scenarios. We're still working on those, but there will be a scenario for an HIE to go and act as both a intermediary in exchange and as a participant in exchange, meaning perform some of the end roles such as recording the results of a assessment or going and providing routing or interpretation, or perhaps even participating in interventions. So yes, there will be.
Wonderful, Bob. Thank you so much. And then we do have questions regarding whether or not individuals can participate without a specific role. This is Joni's saved question from the beginning.
They've changed the process this year. If you do not intend to play a role and actively participate in the Connectathon, then one of two things has to happen. You have to be recommended by, shall we say, someone who is participating, or you have to go through a orientation, basically a Connectathon orientation session that'll be provided by HL7. So the traditional role in the past of just looking in is being, shall we say, downplayed for this Connectathon. They want active participation if possible.
Oh,
Okay.
this is a really interesting thought. Mike, I really appreciate it's always nice to have a family practice person out there raising things, I think. So Mike is asking, will there be a small task group commissioned to investigate the many issues in routing to smartphones or other lower tech destinations like small food pantries or other small CBOs?
So the interesting thing is we're looking at creating reference implementations for smartphones that will both allow an individual and like a food pantry to go and participate in these exchanges. So participate in the referrals, to be able to go in and indicate whether or not the referral was successful, meaning I did get the food I needed or the person showed up at the food pantry. So we're looking at doing that. And when we start that process, which hopefully will be shortly after we get done with the current ballot reconciliation, yes, we'll be taking up that effort you're talking about, both on the Wednesday call and with the TAC. And we'll bring some of that back to this group to go and solicit some additional input. So we'll be small groups and larger groups that will participate in that.
Wonderful. I think that's all. Oh, is there a definition available for community-based referral organization versus a community-based organization? Versus a community-based?
Yeah. The definition we're using is a community-based referral organization is one that is actually using one of these referral platforms. I'll name some, not to be exhaustive, like a Unitas or an Aunt Bertha or a NowPow or a 211, et cetera. The community-based organizations are the ones that are typically delivering the services, the food pantries, somebody dealing with housing or transportation or whatever. That's the way we're using it. Don't take it as a hard delineation, but rather as a way that we could think in terms of, are you in a process, are you in a position to forward the request to someone else to go and effect it, or are you pretty much the endpoint in the process, is the way we've been using it. Will there be a role for entities serving as data management as a service between SEO platforms and HIEs? Yes, that's probably going to look an awful lot like what we're expecting HIEs to play a role in. So other platforms, and we know people, certain organizations are developing them right now to act as almost a referral management environment. So we do expect that that'll be part of it. We don't have the commission to investigate this, or pilots will identify these issues. Okay. Oh, that was from Evelyn.
Yeah, so Evelyn's trying to answer questions, and Evelyn's being very helpful in the chat. I think we're, any other questions before we move on? Bob, thank you for this update.
You're welcome.
Again, I do want to state that there's a really good place to go to help work through some of these concepts in the IG is Bob's IG specific work session, right, Bob? So that those Wednesday 3 to 4 sessions you have through HL7, right?
That is correct. Here's the
It's almost like I'm your lead-in here. Yes, exactly.
Yes, thank you very much for that. So yes, every Wednesday from 3 to 4 Eastern, it's on the HL7 calendar. It is open to anyone. Come join us. Like I said, right now we're focused on ballot reconciliation, but by the end of April or just first week of May, we'll go back to dealing with specific workflow topics, including things like the one that Mike brought up.
And then we do have our technical advisory committee where we do hope to, we try to bring questions that are pinged up here to that group. We are grateful for the collective looking at this from all different angles. And Bob, thank you so much. I believe, are there any other questions for Bob before we just briefly go back to touch base on homework?
This is Janice. I tried looking for that Wednesday meeting and I couldn't find it, and I'm on right now HL7 calendars and HL7 fire, and I don't see the Wednesday meeting on there.
Janice.
If you look, make sure you're looking at all meetings. There's a selection at the top because it defaults to the ones the work groups that you are signed up with. So at the top, you can pull down a list and it says all calls. And then on Wednesday, you will find a call on from 3 to 4 Eastern that is the patient care gravity call.
Okay. I still don't find it. I'll keep looking. Thank you.
And then Janice, I just want to mention that we appreciate your patient perspective, and I just, so maybe if you're having additional complexity signing up, please just write gravity project at emiadvisors.net and we'll try to connect you. We also can try to connect you with Rose, who is the person who works with, amazing person who works with Bob on the technical side.
Okay.
Just feel free to send me an email and I'll make sure that you can find it. I can send you a link to it. Okay.
Yeah, I don't have his email.
This is the link, but I'll go and make sure that it.
Okay.
Go ahead.
Janice, I'll drop it in LinkedIn because you and I connect there.
Right, okay, perfect.
Yeah, let me just make sure the link is correct. For all we know, something changed, but I'll go ahead and verify it while we're talking.
All right, can we pull back up the last slides from our gravity work, and then we can talk about homework and next steps? All right, and next slide. So we actually don't have, so biggest homework that I forgot to put on here was submitting your vote for material hardship. And then we look for, again, 5 p.m. EST tomorrow is when those votes are due by. Write us with any questions or concerns. We're here for you. And then if you want to catch up on any materials, you can go to the Gravity Project Confluence page. You can submit stress, social isolation, intimate partner violence, and elder abuse, screening questions and answers, and diagnoses elements. The homework is listed on the Confluence as well. So this is kind of our, this is where we visit this here. It will be saved here as the last slide on the recording, but it's also available on the Confluence page. I want to thank all of you for a really amazing and dense meeting where we covered a lot of really critical concepts. It's kind of like a classic gravity meeting where we're going deep into areas of new domains with our subject matter experts. Again, very, very grateful for Lisa James having amazing updates on our policy work with our policy lead Savage on past domains, the updates on new domains, and then as always, the technical build. A lot to cover. Thank you so much for being with us.
Sarah,
any final questions? Yeah.
Sarah, one final comment. The link on our site is not correct. We will get it updated. I apologize.
Oh, Janice.
Thank you. I've been trying for a week and I'm like, okay, yeah, am I really having?
No, it's not you. The link is not correct. I think what happened is after every work group meeting, you have to reestablish the calendar invite, and I think the actual number changed. So we'll make sure that link gets updated certainly by end of day tomorrow. Okay.
Okay.
And Janice,
I appreciate it. Yeah, I still would like to hear from you, Sarah. Perfect. Thank you.
Yeah, no, I will help you. We appreciate all of the people who help us understand areas that we have opportunities for improvement. So Janice, yes, I'll directly reach out to you with the way to get to the meeting. And then there is that. So Joni, I'll show you, I'll send you personally the link to the homework section. It should be there when you go the landing page. It's hard sometimes to navigate to the landing page for Confluence, but on that first page, it does describe what we have to do.
Right. Okay. And I have
yeah, Sarah, there needs to be a button for homework. That would be really helpful.
We will do that. You're one of our Confluence secret shoppers, so we take that information to heart.
And a
Uh,
quick question, do you know if patients or consumers have scholarships to the Connectathon?
that's a good question, Janice. I am not an HL7.
I haven't.
Say that again?
If patients and consumers, if we have a scholarship to attend the Connectathon?
A scholarship?
Yeah.
I'm not aware of one.
We're unpaid. I'm unpaid individual. Right.
So Janice, that's
No.
from a social like justice framework. It might be something that Gravity. So I hear you, and your voice is really crucial. And we'll see what we can do.
Okay.
And Lucy,
Thank
do you have any thoughts?
+1 to that.
Yeah,
These kinds of organizations were not necessarily set up to solicit, support, or pay attention to patient consumer input. And the first barrier is often financial. And I'm glad that Janice brought that up because HL7, to my knowledge, is not in the business of supporting consumer patients. Correct me if I'm wrong, Bob, and maybe that will change any minute.
Well, we do have two different work groups that are focused on exactly that. But HL and all of the calls are open without fees. Connectathon is different.
Yeah, that's another matter. Yeah.
Connectathon is different because there's an expectation that you are actually bringing technology to test, not just coming to listen. So that's a bit different. But the calls are open.
They have a patient consumer is the last checkbox there.
Yeah, it'd be difficult to have. Yeah.
That's for people that are bringing applications to support them.
I do want to honor that statement though, and I feel like I just want to. I hear that, and we will circle back around, especially to the folks who've been so willing to help us in representing patient and consumer voices from the get-go. So noted. Thank you so much, Janice, for highlighting one, a calendar error, and two, an opportunity for more equitable engagement of our crucial patient and consumer voices.
Thank you both. Thank you, everybody.
All right. I think
Sarah, real quick, just to comment on that last. This is Will Tesh from Health Alex. We'll be at the Connectathon, and we've done numbers of these over the years. It is a highly technical audience, but as Bob pointed out on that one of his slides, and I forget which one, there were a number of testing roles that are actually the opportunity for the community to get engaged and be part of the solutioning that's occurring at the Connectathon, where all these technologists are building these products. So there is an avenue to get introduced, but you probably need to have some technical acumen.
Yeah, I have some, but yeah, I've attended another Connectathon, and I know Dave DeBronk, who I think goes to every one of them, but I just thought I should address it because I'm really more on the social determinants of health angle, right?
But we were gonna, yeah, I still, thank you. I think I'm taking this to heart, and I promise to include it in the things that I work to do better. Anything else before we close this amazing meeting? Very grateful, folks. Again, do not hesitate to reach out to gravityproject@emiadvisors.net if there's any questions. So grateful. Please cast your votes on material hardship so we can come to consensus on that long-standing work. Thank you so much, everybody.
Thanks, Sarah. Thanks, Bob.
You're more than welcome.
Thanks, everyone.